Dear Toastmasters, a very happy new year to you all, and welcome to the January edition of the Pathways Training Program organized by the Program Quality Directors team. I'm Kasun Ilangaratna, and I will be your host for this evening. First, let me take a few moments to walk you through some of the resources and guides that we have from the previous sessions that we had during the previous year. So I will be sharing these links in the chat window with you as well. But you will have resources to help you out with the pathways and organizing the competencies by the various paths, the FAQs on pathways, doing evaluations and enrolling into pathways sessions, into your paths. We've had sessions on the responsibilities of Basecamp managers, on organizing your scripts, on your speaking voice, and on uncovering the path. And also our previous session in December, we had two sessions on a moment in time, the art of storytelling, and also a black ant in a dark night. 3 things you didn't know about a great script. So with that, I also have one more announcement to make today, which is that if you haven't already done so, please do go ahead and claim your free path that is valid until March of this year. So you have another almost 3 months ahead of you to think about it and select any pathway that you like. And if you select it within this time period, you will get it free of charge. That is applicable for members who renewed their membership in the October cycle, not for those who joined as new members for the first time in that cycle. So it's only for members who renewed that membership. So if you renewed your membership in that time period, please do go ahead and find your free pathway, whatever it is, and go to the Toastmasters website and select that free pathway. As John Ford once said, you can speak well if your tongue can deliver the message of your heart. And to tell us about effectively delivering the message in our hearts, we have yet another champion speaker from District 82. He's a lecturer by profession, and he has been a past president of Siyane Toastmasters Club. He has also been the division contest champion for the Division F evaluation speech contest in 2018 and in 2019. Please join me in welcoming Toastmaster Chamin Athauda, who will be guiding us on working with words. Toastmaster Chamin, over to you.
As Toastmasters, we put a lot of effort to come up with a memorable speech. We focus on our voice, and as Michelle mentioned about our body or body language, nonverbal communication, eye contact, and the platform we use, or the stage presence, how we use the stage. So to focus on these, to deliver a speech, firstly, we need to have a speech. So when we are writing the speech or when we are structuring the speech, if we pay attention to the words we select, if we use the right words, I'm sure we can make our presentation more memorable. Thank you very much, Kasun, and thank you very much, District 82, for having me and giving me this opportunity to share something which will help you make your presentation more colorful. Like I said earlier, to make your presentation more memorable, working with words. In public speaking, there is a saying that show, don't tell. Show, don't tell. So you can tell a story, but what if we can help the listener feel what we are trying to say? For an example, what if we can help the listener create images in their mind, pictures, What if we can help the listener create some sounds in their mind? Because we understand, we perceive things using five senses: our eyes, ears, our mouth, and we can smell using our nose, and we can feel the touch through our body. So, what if, when we are delivering a speech, what if we can create visual images in the mind of the listener, or some sounds, smells, tastes, touch? I would like to introduce some of the techniques that we can use when we structure speech. And some of you might know these techniques. Some of you might not know these techniques, but use them. So some others may be you don't know them. So this is the time to learn them and start practicing, because most of them are related to English language and also literature work. But if we make them, if we use them in our speeches, I'm pretty sure they will be helpful. So let me take some examples first and explain one by one. So how to create sites, or how to create pictures, visual images in mind. Take a look at this example. The flame of the candle flickered. Of course, this sentence, no complaint, we can't complain because it is a simple sentence. But what if we say the bright flame of the candle danced, moving the dark shadows in the room? Compare the first sentence and the second one. The bright flame of the candle danced in the dark, or danced moving the dark shadows in the room. So then we will be helping the listener create an image in their mind. Another example, she was excited to see her mom. Simple sentence. But what if we put it in this way? She sprinted across the room, jumped into her mom's arms, and buried her head in her chest. Can't we create this kind of image? So that is we call visual imagery, or we help the listener create images in their mind. The second is creating sounds. I heard the mushrooms were being fried, but what if we say, I heard popping and crackling of mushrooms in the frying pan? I'm sure the second sentence will help us create some sounds that popping and crackling in our mind. So in this way, we can create some smells as well. She smelled the rose flower or rose flowers. Simple sentence. But if I tell you, she could smell the fragrance of the rose flowers or roses mixed with the smell of wet soil. So we need to ask ourselves the question, which sentence will help us create more images or some sort of smell in our mind? I'm sure that is the second sentence. So the point is here, without telling things, what if we try to show? Let's take another example. Creating tastes. In your speech, we can simply say he ate the chocolate. But what if we say the sweet taste of milk chocolate ran over his taste buds, or satisfied his taste buds? That's creating taste. And we can create some touch as well by using the same technique. I lied on the grass. But what if we say, I lied on the grass and felt the tickle of lean leaves against my skin? So here, this technique is called using sensory details. In other words, we help the listener create visual images in their mind, or sounds, sometimes smells, sometimes tastes, or sometimes touch. So that's the first technique I wanted to discuss. And let's give it a try. When you try to write a speech, your next speech, it can be a pathways speech, or it can be the speech that you are planning to write for the upcoming contest. The second technique is, this is called similes. Similes, what we do use in similes, we compare one thing with another, a comparison using the word like or as. Simple sentence, my life was hard. In speeches, we talk about our struggles. Ladies and gentlemen, my life was hard. Fine. But what if I say, my dear friends, my life was like a puzzle and I had no idea about the way to solve it? Which one is more descriptive? When I say my life was like a puzzle, or we can say now life, we can use a lot of similes uh, that we can compare with our life, or we can compare life with a lot of similes. Her life was like a race and she really wanted to win it. Or sometimes we say life is like a roller coaster ride. So these are similes. Of course, we can use them to compare one thing with another. Another example, Toastmasters Club is the best place to learn something, learn public speaking. What if I put it this way? Toastmasters Club is like a learning lab where we can try something new every single day, like a learning lab. So next time what we can do when you want to bring these kind of maybe struggles, or when you want to compare one thing with another, practice using the technique called similes. And the second thing is, so these similes we can make them, but there are some fixed similes in English language, like these ones. So here, this is a thing. Here, these are fixed. They are concrete words in English language. So what we need to do, we can spend some time to learn them. As busy as an ant or a bee, as changeable as the weather. Her mind is as changeable as the weather, or maybe his mind. As good as gold, as green as grass. So at the end of this session, I will share a document which has got some fixed similes in English language and also some idioms. So I will share it with you so you can download it and just read. And also I will be sharing a link for YouTube video which talks about some more rhetorical devices. So similes, these are the fixed one in the language, and the previous one we discussed, of course, we can make them and use them in an effective way. Then the second technique, or the next technique, is after similes, metaphors. Here what we do, earlier we compared one thing with another using the words like or as. But here we directly compare. Let me show you in this example. We can say, my father always saves me. And I can say, my father is a superhero who is there to save me whenever I'm in trouble. Earlier we said, my father is like a superhero, but here we can say, my father is a superhero. When you in your icebreaker speech, maybe when you are talking about your life, you can say, let me talk about my life, little bit about my life. But what if we say, let me talk about a few exciting chapters in my life book, in my life book. So I'm saying that my life is a book, or you can say my life is a movie, or we can say my life is a race. Earlier we said my life is like a race. Now we are saying my life is a race, like direct comparison. This is metaphors. Of course, we can use to compare one thing with another. And the next technique is alliteration. What we do here, sometimes when you listen to some of the speeches, when you read some poems or stories, we can hear some words in the same line, some close words or words closer to each other start with the same sound. Every time I hear the term alliteration, what comes to my mind is this. In the poem Matilda, who told lies and burned to death by Hilaire Belloc, if I'm not mistaken. So there is a beautiful line. Matilda went tiptoe to the telephone. Tiptoe to the telephone. Now see here, the words in the yellow color, they start with the same sound. Please don't get this wrong. It's nothing to do with spellings, everything to do with the sound. Tiptoe to telephone. So t sound. I'm sure you will be able to recall your memory and go back to some of the speeches. If I'm not mistaken, last year's champion, Mike Carr, used a lot of alterations. Come and clean the chaos in the classroom. K sound. Come and clean the chaos in the classroom. Do you remember what I used at the beginning of the presentation? I said, if we can understand how to work with words, it will make your speech more memorable. Sound. So this technique is called alliteration. It is better to keep the word in your mind or remember the words, these terms, because you can do a research after this presentation when you're trying to structure a speech. Of course, you can just do a research and learn more about these techniques and start using them in your speeches. And another is using idioms and proverbs. There are differences between idioms and proverbs, but this is not the time to talk about that difference or those differences. Here, we can see a lot of native speakers, they use idioms and proverbs. They are really beautiful. If we add them in our speech, I'm pretty sure they will add more color, because they simply, we can say something that we want to say with a lot of words can be said using one small proverb or idiom. A piece of cake. A piece of cake means a very easy task. The teacher said the homework is a piece of cake, so the student started to eat it. This is one of the jokes, the stories I tell with my students. But we can say delivering a speech is a piece of cake for Toastmasters. Cry over spilt milk. That means there is no point of regretting about something which happened, and it is better to just move on. Cry over spilled milk. My mentor always advises me not to cry over spilled milk. And another one, known one, is beating around the bush. That means without talking to the point, we just talk about all other things without talking to the point, without talking about the main thing. So there we can say, look, don't beat around the bush, just tell me what you want. So I was beating around the bush and my manager realized it. Just like that, what we can do here, we can do a small research on idioms and proverbs if you are not familiar with these, and then we can start using them in our presentations. And not only these kind of techniques, sometimes we overuse, especially as Sri Lankans, we overuse some words. For an example, the word good. We say it's a good man, good idea, good speech, good club, good idea. If you think about it again, maybe good is not the exact word. You can come up with a more specific word. A little bit specific word. Maybe Instead of saying good topic, maybe we can say timely topic. I like your speech because it was a timely topic. Good story, maybe fascinating story. Wow, it was a fascinating story. Good method, maybe effective method. Generous gentleman, rather than good gentleman, we can say, but maybe generous is the word you wanted to use. So my point is, my dear friends, without going for these kind of common words, sometimes we need to use. I'm not saying that always you should use these kind of specific words. No, there are some times rather than using these kind of general words, we can go for the right word. And some other words that I hear sometimes we overuse bad. Maybe instead of bad, maybe we can find some other words, effective words, nice, beautiful, and small and big. Maybe instead of big, we can say massive, giant, gigantic, mammoth, large, extensive, just like that. We can go for some little bit uncommon words, maybe, because whole point is then the listener may see your speech as a little extraordinary one rather than an ordinary one. Right, I would like you to do a research on these techniques as well, because we are talking about 20 to 30 minutes time, and we can't discuss all the techniques which are the rhetorical devices in English language. So personification. Personification is a technique we use to give living qualities to non-living things. Most of the time we can see sun, moon, wind, rain, they are personified. So for an example, if I'm to put it in a sentence, we can say, rather than saying the sun was shining bright, maybe we can say the sun was smiling at me. Or if it is too hot, you can say the sun began to stare at me. So sun is a non-living thing, but we give the quality of living, or we give life to it, and we say the moon was smiling with me. We can practice triads using three words together. We use repetition a lot in speeches. We hear that to emphasize, we repeat, we bring the repetition, and rhyming words. So please do a research on rhetorical devices, and I'm sure a lot of techniques will come, and you can just pick some of the ones you would like to use and start practicing them. So right, so let us take a look at what we discussed right now. As I told you, as speakers, as Toastmasters, we put a lot of effort to bring memorable speeches, to inspire others. So if we can put a little bit more effort to select the right words, I'm sure we can make our speech presentation more memorable. So the techniques we discussed, adding sensory details, which means we help the listener create images. What kind of images? Visual images, see images, pictures in their mind, sounds, smells, tastes, and touch. And then the next technique is similes. We can compare using as or like two different things. And the third one is metaphors. It is direct comparison. My father is a superhero. Similes, we can say my father is like a superhero. That technique. And alliteration. In a line, two or more words, if they start with the same sound, that is alliteration. She went tiptoe to the telephone. So just like that, we can use alliteration. And then we talked about idioms and proverbs. We can use them in our speeches, and also the other things that we can do a research on rhetorical devices. And like I told you at the end of this presentation, I will share a small sheet which has got some similes, some idioms. Please go through it and be familiar and start using them. Because ultimately, we would all like to make an impact, or we would like to create an idea in the listener's mind. When we use the right words in the right way, and like Michelle said, when we add our nonverbal communication, body language also, I'm sure you will be able to deliver more memorable speeches. Back to you, Kasim.
Thank you so much, Toastmaster Chamin. Could I invite the audience as well to join with me in a round of virtual applause for Toastmaster Chamin for guiding us on working with words. With that, we have come to the end of one segment of today's program, but we know that you have several questions that you want to ask, so we are not done yet. And let me invite Toastmaster Michelle and Toastmaster Chamin to join with me for the Q&A session. And let me also take the opportunity to invite someone who needs no introduction at all, our Program Quality Director, Distinguished Toastmaster Siyane Salgado, to join us for the Q&A session and provide her insights for the pathways related questions. So we've had a few questions coming through the registration forms, but you can always ask any questions related to today's session or pathways through the Zoom question and answer session as well, question and answer feature as well. But till then, let's get started with the Q&A session. And the first question of today will go to Toastmaster Michelle. Toastmaster Michelle, is the question from our audience member. I have watched Toastmasters International Speech Contest and there were really good speakers in there. What are some tips to be a good speaker? I think you've covered some of those points also, but let me repeat the final part of that. What are some tips to be a good speaker?
Right. Thank you, Kasun. So I think there are many things that make a good speaker, but I'd like to share one thing that I think is core and something that is really of essence when we do a speech, and that is the story that we pick. We all talk about how we use stories to convey our messages. And I have learned through my speeches that if I have a story that has impacted my life, that has changed me in some way, that has altered something for me, then there has been enough impact to teach me something. And that is the message that I want to share with the audience as well. So when I have a story like that, that has an emotional connection to me, and I can share that with my audience, that is where that whole connection with your audience happens. So I think to be an effective speaker, we need to have stories, and we do have stories. I mean, every day in our lives, we have multiple stories happening around us. But picking the ones that really have impacted us and that can help our audience also to relate to, I think is what is important. So picking the right story and then, of course, narrating it with your words, with your body language, your voice, and all of that coming together, I think that makes a pretty good speaker. Over to you, Kasim.
Thank you so much, Toastmaster Michelle, for your valuable insights. And our next question goes to Toastmaster Chamin. How do we prepare or write an attractive speech? How do we prepare or write an attractive speech? Toastmaster Chamin.
Yeah, thank you, Kasun. I think that was the purpose of my presentation as well, because like I said in the presentation, to deliver, we need to have a speech. So I personally write my speech, and there are some people who do not write the speech, but they just kind of keep their speech in their mind and they deliver. But either way, what if we select some beautiful words in our speech rather than using it? Is okay to use simple sentences, simple words. We need to keep it simple, but to make it more attractive, we can think of some of the techniques. If you just analyze some past speakers, champion speakers, we can see they have gone that traveled that extra mile to find those techniques. So the techniques we discussed, if we use them, and there are more, like I said, more rhetorical devices are there. So if we do a research and identify these techniques, and if we use them relevantly, accordingly, I'm sure we can write an attractive speech. So you can just combine it with what Michelle said, put the message, what you want to share, and deliver it in your style. So I'm sure then it will be attractive.
Thank you so much, Toastmaster Chamin. And our next question is pathways related. So I would invite DTM Sriyanti to answer this question. If I choose presentation mastery as my first pathway, I will be fulfilling only 2 competencies. Will it be a disadvantage to myself? Should I have to fulfill more than 2 competencies in my first pathway?
Well,
If
not
I choose
necessary. Yeah, I got the question, cousin. Thank you. Well, it's not necessary that you have to fulfill all the core competencies which are available. So whatever path you choose, go in for it and then start it, because you have actually looked at the questionnaires, you have answered the questionnaires, and they've selected a path for you. However, in selecting the path, this is in general for everyone, in selecting a path, despite the fact that you get a path selected after answering all the questions, if you don't like that path, you can also look at the other paths and select another path. In this particular instance, if you feel this is not enough right now, just as Kasun said right at the beginning, all of us who are members have the option of going in for a second path. So look around, find a path which you feel there are more competencies, not necessary, but you can choose another path and you can do both simultaneously. You can finish both level 1s, then you can move to level 2. So you take a longer time to finish the 2 paths, but you finish the 2 paths simultaneously at the same time. I hope that answered your question, whoever who asked that question. Over to you, Kasun.
Thank you so much, madam. And let me send my next question. Let me direct my next question to Toastmaster Michelle. How to make your speech interesting to the audience, or how to attract the audience towards you? Would you like me to repeat that, Toastmaster Michelle?
No, Kasun, I got the question. I think the best way to attract the audience to you or to connect the audience to you is to be yourself on stage. Because, like I said, it's easy for the audience to detect whether you're being sincere, whether you're being authentic, and whether you're being genuine about the feelings, the message you want to share. And I think if that comes out, your presence, your true self comes out on stage, then I think that is where that whole connection with the audience happens. So for me, I think being true to yourself and bringing out that authenticity on stage is what is important. Kasim.
Thank you so much, Toastmaster Michelle. Next, Toastmaster Chamin. When it comes to prepared speeches, is it okay if I write a script and practice it?
or should I have to note down only points and practice it?
Right. I think seems like both are okay. Both methods are used by speakers. And first, I have heard in a lot of training programs, I have heard some presenters say that they write every single word, because especially what they say, the people who approve the first, what they say that you can't on the stage, let's say it's a competition, on the stage, when you are delivering the speech, you should know what words you use, exact words, because their point is, um, what if you just use the wrong word when you try to use synonyms or different words? So there they argue that it is therefore it is better to write the entire speech word to word and practice it. And the second, I think some other presenters have mentioned, like they mentioned that sometimes they don't write their speech, so they just write the points, only main points, and they rehearse. For me, I have practiced both, but if I'm going for a competition contest, I would just write my entire speech and practice it. Kasun, I hope I answered that question.
Yes, thank you to Mr. Chamin. And next, let me pick up a pathways related question. So there's a question, what do you mean by navigator in the levels? So the navigator is a collection of resources at this point that Toastmasters has prepared for helping new members not only with pathways but with several other aspects of Toastmasters. So it's basically an introduction to Toastmasters for all your new members in the club. So let me just share my screen and show it to you as well. So this page is actually authentication protected, so you need to actually log into the Toastmasters website to be able to see it. And it's just toastmasters.org slash the dash navigator. And you'll see here there are some links as well over here now. And we have this PDF document as well over here. So this is what that looks like as well. So you'll have about Toastmasters in general, you have about the pathways learning experience, you have things about the club executive committee, about meeting rules. All of that information has been provided. So it's like a getting started manual for Toastmasters itself. And in addition to that PDF document, you have so many other links and resources over here that you can take your time and go through. And all of that will help you with getting started with your new members, or with getting the new members in your club get started with Toastmasters as well. And I hope that answers the question raised by our audience member. And let me return to a question for Toastmaster Michelle. How do we find our own style of body language?
Again, I think, Kasun, that it is about being yourself. See, I'm not a humorous speaker. I'm not a humorous person. I'm a very serious person. But I have learned the art of giving humorous speeches because I've tried different things. And finally, I've settled in something that I feel comfortable in. So whether it's how I move on stage, or whether it is how I pronounce my words, or whether it is just a script that I use, whatever it is that brings out that humor through my body language on stage, that is what I use. So I think it's important for us to experiment with different types of body language, because we watch a lot of champion speeches, we watch a lot of other Toastmaster speeches, and I think it's good to info from all of this and try out different styles, and then you finally settle into something that you are comfortable in. Because it's, see, when you have your own style, nobody else can really copy that, because that is you, and that is what is important. And until you find that, I think it's all right to experiment and try out different ways. But there is no set way of saying, this is what needs to be done, because what will work for me will not work for you. So my advice would be, try as many as possible in your club, with your project speeches, have fun with it. And then you'll know when you find your own style of body language.
Let
Kasun.
me add something to that, Kasun. It's true what Michelle says. She is generally a serious person, and she says she's serious. I'm more serious. Having said that, I remember the time that Michelle said, I was surprised to see you at division level contest humorous. So if I could have gone up to the division level and contested at humorous, all of you can try out. Try to speak about everyday things that happen to you and experiment with them, just like Michelle says, and then you will find your niche at some stage or the other. Over to you, Kasun.
Thank you so much, Toastmaster Michelle and Idi and Shriyanti. And next question to Toastmaster Chamin. Our participant is asking us some tips to remember the speech, and he asks if by hearting the speech is effective. If
These questions are really hard ones because they okay, because we can't say like do this, definitely this will work out for you. Even Michelle can add if you have got any points, Michelle. I think one thing I have practiced is one thing I practice is I firstly internalize the speech. I ask myself what I expect or what my purpose is. Firstly, I understand, right? Okay, what is the purpose of me doing this presentation or doing this speech? And then I just go divide the speech into main areas or main categories. Of course, the way I practice it, after that, I just word by word I practice. At the same time, although I practice word by word, at the same time, I make sure to remember the main points as well. Because just in case I forget a word, if I can remember where I am, I know that how to jump into the next point, next main point. So to remember, I would say it is better to find out the main areas of your speech and the sequence, and then practice like what is coming first, what is coming next, that sequence, that order. And the other thing is just internalize it by asking yourself the question, what am I trying to do with this speech? And continuous practice. That will be a good solution. I hope I answered that question, Kasun.
Michelle, if you could add something to that.
I agree with Chamin. I think when you memorize your speech, and if you tend to forget a word or a sentence or a phrase in between, you tend to get stuck because you need that whole flow of your speech to continue. So instead, internalizing is probably the best way forward, because when you keep on repeating, rehearsing, and practicing your speech, automatically the main points, your storyline gets registered with you. So what happens is, even though you write your speech, you know how the flow goes. So even if you miss a sentence or you miss a phrase, you can continue, you can put your own words at that point and continue the story because you know what comes next. So that probably is a better way of handling it. But then, having said that, some people are really good at memorizing words, keeping it in their mind, and then delivering it word for word. So whatever works for you. But probably the best thing is to have that storyline internalized, so that whatever comes your way, you can continue the story, because your audience will never know, right? What you've written on paper, your audience will never know. So whether you actually say what was on that sheet of paper, or whether you say something impromptu at that moment that resonates with your whole story and message, that really wouldn't affect the uh, whole speech. So yes, Hassan.
Thank you so much, Chamin. And our next question, how do we identify the misuse of body language? How do we identify the misuse of body language? I will direct that to Toastmaster Michelle first.
So, like I mentioned, when we are nervous, see that this is when it happens most of the time. When you're nervous and you don't really know exactly what you have to say, you tend to use unnecessary body language, especially our hands. We don't know what to do with them. So we move them, we wave them around unnecessarily, we keep pacing unnecessarily. Even standing still is a problem. Like I said, we either sway or we rock, or we shift our weight, and all that is because there's this nervous energy building up inside of us. So the trick would be able to control our nervous energy and direct it into purposeful movements and purposeful gestures. And that way, you will avoid all these awkward and distracting gestures and movements on stage. So, my advice would be to identify what you really want to do and direct all that energy towards that, so that you don't have room to unnecessarily use gestures and movements to release that nervous energy. I
Thank you,
hope that,
Toastmaster.
yeah.
Thank you, Toastmaster Michelle. Toastmaster Chamin, if there is anything you want to add.
Yes, Kasuna, one thing I have noticed this from me. I have my own repetitive gestures. Maybe it is like doing this, or maybe doing this. So the tendency is when I deliver a speech, I use those hand gestures more often. When I'm nervous, when I'm too excited, like Michelle mentioned, it is out of my control. So I use them over and over again, which does not add color to the presentation delivery. Instead, it becomes a distraction. So it is better to be aware of what kind of gestures or how we love to or how we like to use our body in a way which helps, in a way, it helps the listener get the message more effectively. So, my point is please be mindful of the repetitive gestures. If you have some, please be mindful and always ask the purpose behind using any of the gestures or any of the movements. If we do it purposefully, I'm sure um, it will help the listener understand what you try to say.
Kasunu, I would like to add something to this. Remember, always your practice ground is your club. And that's where you can really experiment a lot. If you're talking about body language and as well as voice variation, 2 points which you can ask your evaluator to particularly look at your body language, to particularly look at your voice variation. Thereby, each time you give a speech, you will see whether you can improve a little bit more. So be particular about the club speech that you give. That's definitely a practicing ground to improve more and more. Over to you, Kasun.
Thank you, madam. Uh, and our next question, I think I will start with you again, Madam Sriyanti. So the question is as follows: how do we improve vocal variety for a person who usually does speeches monotonously? How do we learn to do various voices, and how do we have effective pauses?
One thing which is to be done is sing. Now, don't tell me you all can't sing, right? Because I strongly believe every person who can talk can sing. So starting with the national anthem, start, because you can start softly, then you can start singing loud. Also ask your evaluator to watch out for those different phrases of your speech. Practice with one sentence. practice makes you perfect, which is really true in this case. Try practicing softer tones, also practicing louder tones. Make very special phrases that you have and then practice them softly. The same phrase, just like Chamin explained about working with words, how will it happen if I say I have a car, to saying I have a big blue car? So then you make it different. I mean, I have a car, all right. So what's the big deal that you have a car? But when you want to say I have a big, you always pronounce that I have a big blue car. Your voice also tends to stress on that. So try to have sentences which you start with voice variation. Over to you, Kasan.
Thank you, madam. Toastmaster Chamin or Toastmaster Michelle, if there is anything you would like to add.
I think in voice variation, it's something that I have to actually keep practicing with. Your voice projection is important, and I think that has a lot to do with your breathing as well. So, doing your breathing exercises and your projection of voice is important. And like Sriyanti said, it's something that you need to practice constantly if you are to speak clearly and audibly. And the variation after that is something easier to do, I think, if you have that full projection voice sorted out first. It's something that I have been working on for a long time, and I still am. So that's why I'm quite confident that that is something that's important.
Thank you, Toastmaster Michelle. And to add to that, we have had a previous session on your speaking voice as well, where Toastmaster Dona Balasurya is going in depth about vocal variation. So the links I have posted on the chat as well, and you can also find it by following the District 82 page on YouTube and accessing the videos on that page. So through that also you can go more in depth about this topic of vocal variation if you like. But again, a big thank you to all our panelists also for providing their insights on this as well. So we'll take one more question for tonight. And I hope that I could ask the presenters, the panelists, to answer the remaining questions on the chat window. So I'll take this question, which has been asked by a few people, where they are requesting for pointers on how to maximize the use of effective body language on virtual platforms, and especially for gestures and eye contact. So we'll start that with Toastmaster Michelle, perhaps.
I'm really a bad person to answer this question because I haven't really perfected the small screen yet. But I think eye contact, something that I learned early in my online presentations, is that we need to look directly into the camera. I think a lot of us make the mistake of looking at ourselves or the people in the gallery view, and when we do that, our eye contact with the audience is broken because then we're looking sideways. So looking into the camera is something important if you want to maintain your eye contact with your audience, your online audience. And with gestures, I think speakers like me who have been used to the stage and who like the big stage, we're used to big gestures. And now, when you have to adapt to a small screen, you have to also adapt your gestures. So we usually say, don't use tilted gestures, use big gestures. But now I think it's the opposite, because you need to be able to make maximum use of your performance space is now the little screen. So to be able to make maximum use of it is something that I think all of us have to relearn, from the big stage to the screen. And it's something that is work in progress for me. So maybe Chamin or Sriyanti can add more to this.
Did we lose Chamin for a minute? I think so. So let me add to that. once again, I strongly say your practice ground is your club. Now, I'm very comfortable seated and doing speeches, but I know if you stand up while doing your speech in the club, that is your practice ground. And some of the things that you can do is while you're standing, you can come forward and also move backwards. Then stagecraft your speech and move it from one side, center, and to the other side, because then you can see yourself to see what is the amount you can use. Also use your hands and see that you don't go up. Now see, my hand has gone really up, so no point in making that gesture. So you need to practice in the club. And that's one of the reasons why I strongly advise even the contests which are coming up, ask your people to have even the club contest on Zoom so that you practice your first speech that you deliver on Zoom and make your mistakes there. So when you're selected and you move to the area, you can also improve on it a little bit more. So go ahead, give your name for a club speech and practice, get up, stand up, do something that's definitely on stage that we have to do it. Over to you, Kasun.
Toastmaster Chamin, if you would like to share your insights on this as well.
Kasun, the question was how to use online platform, virtual platform more effectively. Am I right?
Correct.
My connection is really bad. That's why I just kept the video off. Am I audible?
Yes.
Right. Okay. So here is the thing. We need to understand the difference between delivering a speech in front of a real audience and virtual audience or in front of a camera. It is like acting in front of a camera. I think we need to study. That's what Mike Carr did. I think that's what the speakers, if you watched that this last year's championship program, world championship program, I learned a lot. I found out that they had researched a lot on virtual platforms, like different directions. If you just watch Mike Carr's speech again and see different like unique gestures, number of gestures he used, I don't think we can use them in front of a physical or real audience. They will not be that effective, but they are effective in front of a camera, like Michelle mentioned. So I think we need to, like we got used to Zoom, these kind of online platforms. The next step is learn more about like using this effectively and the right distance and different gestures we can bring. If we just do a study, I'm sure we will be able to come up with a lot of new maybe gestures, new things, because if we try to deliver the same way, the same speech, maybe the way we deliver in front of a physical audience, I don't think it will be that effective in front of a camera or this kind of a virtual platform. So my answer is better to learn a little bit more about virtual platforms, and please watch last year's competition contest, and there will be a lot to learn from them. Hope I answered the question, Kasun.
Yes, thank you so much, Toastmaster Chamin. Thank you so much also to distinguished Toastmaster Sriyanti and Toastmaster Michelle as well for all your valuable inputs throughout the past 1.5 hours. So with that, we are going to conclude our Q&A session. So I have shared a feedback form on the Zoom chat link as well. But before we wrap up, we would also like to hear a few words from our program quality director. So, TM Sriyanti, over to you.
Thank you, Kasun. Well, these programs are held every Friday, and this was a new feature that we started this year because I felt that we could reach a bigger audience. So please also tell your friends, tell your club members to join us. It's personally, I feel it's unfortunate that we had only 70 odd members today when we have 4,000 members in our little island at the moment. I'm not expecting all 4,000 to come. We can actually accommodate only 500. But please do tell your friends as well that this is happening every first Friday. It might be a little bit on the long side when you say 1.5 hours, but you would see that we do bring in some of the best of the best, like Michelle and Chamin today. We also had Rashanta and Donna for vocal variety. And if you do need anything very particular, please do write to us and we will see how we could accommodate that as well. Keep in contact with us and we will try to answer all your questions and accommodate the best presentations for you from the PQD team. Over to you, Kasun.
Thank you so much, madam. And with that, we will need to wrap up our session for today. So we couldn't answer all the questions live, but I believe our two presenters will be taking up those questions on the chat windows and answering them. And while they're doing that, I would also request that you, the audience, could visit the URLs or scan this QR code and go and complete the feedback form so that we can better integrate that feedback into the upcoming sessions. So we will be keeping you informed on our upcoming sessions, but until then, let me once again wish you all a happy new year and a pleasant evening ahead. We'll wrap up our session for tonight, but I hope to see you all again soon.